First off, congrats on your win.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a hell of a race. Lots of excitement, but it was a lot of fun too.
What would you say was the biggest challenge?
I would say this year the biggest challenge was sort of the mental warfare.
Okay.
Mainly just because I had put a lot of pressure on myself going into the race. On my dog team, we just were really prepared, and then the way the race kind of developed, we got to the front pretty early, and then we were in the lead pretty much the whole second half of the race. And when you got a 5-time champion, kind of just riding right behind you for 500 miles, it was definitely a lot of convincing yourself that you're doing the right thing, that you're running your own race, that you're actually, not in a position you shouldn't be in. And that was definitely some of the mental challenges of the race. I'd say those were the most challenging parts of this race for me.
Did you have a favorite moment of the race?
I would say, there's a lot of favorite moments. There was a lot of high points in this race and several low points. But I would say there was a really bad storm on the last leg of the race. The last 77 miles is generally we kind of all race to that last that last checkpoint because there's an 8-hour mandatory there. And that kind of sets you up for the last run to get into Nome. And a lot of times whoever gets the White Mountain checkpoint first, there's not a ton of separation that happens in that a lot of difference that happens in that last 77 miles. But this year there was a really bad storm. And that last 77 miles is probably some of the most difficult mushing that I'd ever done all season. And maybe ever in my career. The wind was blowing 60 miles an hour and we got caught in the ground blizzard. And, this whole time I've got Dallas behind me, and I got blown off the trail and ended up way down away from the trail in that weather. And I think one of the best moments was when I got up and just decided we were going to make this happen. And I found the trail. And when the dogs decided that they were willing to get back up and follow me back to the trail. And then once we got back to the trail, they just were like rock stars, and they ran super fast and awesome right through the wind. Like, again, it was like 65 miles an hour, and that it's some intense conditions to be in. And I think when we got back to the trail and our dream was realized again, there was about an hour there where I was, like, we're giving up this Iditarod championship, like 50 miles from the finish line. So there was some harrowing moments there for a little while, but once we got back to the trail and we were moving again, it was like we just overcame some major stuff. And I think we're going to go win the Iditarod now. So that was a pretty good moment, especially after an hour of worrying that we were maybe just letting it slip away.
And you said you had mental warfare to deal with. Was it worry about, or how could you describe it when you say mental warfare?
Yeah, I think mostly it's you're wondering if you're making the right decisions, basically, especially when you're put in the lead like that. Like, ideally for a musher, you want to kind of ride back and make a move and pass people and not be up in the front all the time, because up in the front is a risky place to be if there's bad weather, you're encountering the first sections of trail. And so there's always a lot of question mark in that. And then on top of that, it was just, you got a 5-time champion behind you. So it's not necessarily worry. I think it's you're second guessing whether you're making the right decisions. And in the end, you have to just like battle through that and know, like, our training, I have the right dog team. This is exactly where we're supposed to be. And we have to just continue going forth. And you have to basically just have confidence in yourself and the plan and everything in your dogs about what you're doing. And that's difficult when you are, in the lead of a 1,000-mile race from mile 430 all the way through. You're constantly sort of having to beat back those second guessing of your plan and of your strategy.
Did you have anything that you would say to yourself to remind yourself that you're making the right decisions, or like a specific pep talk?
Run your own race is one of my biggest mottos, because in these races it's really easy to get caught up in somebody else's race. And in this one, it was a little different because I was in the lead, so I wasn't really chasing anybody. I was really setting the pace. I was setting the the bar as to where this race was going to go. But it was important that I ran my own race, that I didn't focus on Dallas behind me or anyone else behind me, and just focus on the 14 dogs ahead of me. And that's one of my main mottos out there, because you can easily get caught up in somebody else's stuff. And if you're driving somebody else's dog team, you're definitely doing yours a disfavor. So that's one of my biggest ones. And then pain is inevitable, suffering is optional is another one. There was definitely some times in that wind and stuff that you just had to sort of put it all into perspective and realize that we chose to be out here and that we're enjoying this. It might be not that much fun right this minute, but overall we really love it. So it's really just it's all mental warfare. I think in the end, you're keeping your head screwed on straight. And during these races, when you're dealing with a lot of sleep deprivation plays a huge role in all this, because we're not sleeping hardly at all. Like I think I got about 16 hours of sleep from start to finish over an 8-day period. So it's not a lot of sleep. And so you're balancing that on top of that. And that's why you have to have confidence in your team, because if you don't have confidence in your team, you have nothing to fall back on.
Is this the first race where you've been in setting the lead pace for that long? So it was almost what,
for that long, yeah.
miles?
It really ups the ante when you've got the 5-time champion of the Iditarod behind you. It definitely, I think everything's a little bit more heightened when that's going on. Plus there was just a lot of pressure, or a lot of energy around this race. I mean, to be honest, a lot of people didn't want to see Dallas CV win again. And I think there were a lot of people that wanted to see me win. And I think the combination of those two things made for a lot of people, being behind me a lot. And I had to somehow turn all of that pressure. 6 months leading up to the race, I'm getting personal messages from people saying, "You got this, you can win this race, you can beat Dallas, you're the one," like over and over and over again for like months, and then we're at the start line and people are coming up to me and telling me, you can do this, and so I had to somehow take all of that energy and all of that pressure and turn it into energy. And so that I wasn't feeling the weight, that I was taking all of that and using it as sort of strength and power out on the trail. And I was able to do that. And that was probably what I was most proud of in this race, because there was a tremendous amount of pressure that could have turned into pressure and stress. And instead I was able to just take all that good vibes and sort of turn it into positive stuff for me out on the trail. And I think that was a huge part of being able to sort of decipher all of the mental warfare, was be able to take that stuff and not see it as pressure, but see it as just a whole bunch of support. It was definitely, that was different this year than any other race that I've ever run.
How do you deal with the extreme temperature and weathers out on a race like that?
Well, you be prepared, that's the biggest thing is, knowing how to combat that stuff before you get to the race is your biggest deal there. Like, you just have to be ready for anything. And we pack food drops before the race, all the food and gear and supplies that we need, and they get sent out to all the checkpoints. And so you're basically, all the logistics for your race happen a month before, when you're going through, okay, what kind of conditions am I going to run into at the Ruby checkpoint? You don't know. It could be 50 above or 50 below. And so you're packing everything that the dogs need, that I need, everything you can think of in those drop bags. And, each year that goes by, your drop bags get a little heavier. You get a little more stuff in there because you've experienced different things at different places around the trail. And you realize like, oh man, this could happen here. So you're packing even more stuff. So I think the experience of having run the race over all these years helps you better prepare for anything that you're going to run into on the trail. And then it all goes back to that mental aspect of it, like just knowing that you're prepared, knowing that you're never going to give up on it, and knowing that like you can get through any conditions is half the battle. And just making sure that you keep a positive attitude. I mean, so much of this is all about that positive attitude, because your energy, the energy that I put out on the trail, flows right into the dogs. And so if I'm having a bad time, if I'm not enjoying myself, if I'm cold, all of that energy flows right into the dogs, and then they'll turn into a little bit sour. If I'm not having a good time in the mood, they're going to be in a pissy mood, and that doesn't help anybody. So in the end out there, the biggest thing that I can do is be a good leader, keep a positive attitude, and you can't really fake it either. So the dogs can see right through most anything. So in the end, you really do have to truly be happy and excited about what you're doing out there. I'm just really fortunate that, everyone asks, how do you do that? Well, I think it's passion. I think I thoroughly enjoy what I do. I'm living the exact life I want to live. And because of that, I'm able to go out there and keep that positive attitude and really, and it flows right into the dogs. And when the dogs are happy, you can pretty much, get through any conditions.
I've got to ask about the last snowstorm and if you had been in a different position, because there's been some controversy about other mushers getting disqualified for bringing the dogs into the rest areas. Do you have any thoughts on that, or how would you deal with a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, it's a big deal right now. And the bottom line is, I mean, if the brass tacks of it is, we're in a race, there's rules. And in order to keep the race competitive, in order to keep the race where it's still a race that we're running for money, we're running for prestige, we're running for all of these things, and we want we want the competitiveness to be on an even plane. Mm-hmm. And so clearly dog care is our number one first thing. We want to take care of our dogs. We want to do the best thing for our dogs. That should always be in the forefront. But when I'm out there and I'm in this storm and it's blowing 40 miles an hour or 50 or 60 miles an hour, the one thing that I'm thinking of is, let's get out of this situation right now, so as people say, oh, that storm was too much, and you're out there pushing the dogs, but in the end, those dogs are so much tougher than we are. So if I'm out there and I'm enduring these conditions, the dogs are in a way better place than I am. That's just the reality of it. They're designed for this stuff. And so if you've prepared your team properly, if you're surviving, your dogs are probably fine. But you as as an individual, you have to make the decision that if you're in a place where you have the ability to bring your dogs in a cabin and you feel like that's what's best for your dogs in that situation, then do it. But also realize you need to serve the penalty that comes along with that. Like you've lost your competitive edge as soon as you've done that, because it is a competitive edge to bring your dogs inside and let them sit in a plush 55-degree weather cabin when it's blowing 40 miles an hour. So for me, it's all about the dogs, but we also are in a competitive race and we have to all play by the same rules. And when you break a rule, that even if it was for the good of your dogs, you have to realize you're taking a penalty as far as the race goes. And you can take all the pride you want and bring your dogs inside and realizing that you did what was best for your dogs right there. But you also have to serve that penalty and make it so it is a clear and level playing field for everybody out in the race.
What would you tell somebody who was interested in mushing? What would be like, there's a little kid who's like, oh, wow, look at this guy who just ran 1,000 miles. What would you tell them?
I mean, I think in the end, follow your dreams, because like anything is possible. Like I'm out here living in the middle of nowhere. I have 55 sled dogs. My entire life is committed to that. I get to, my life is survival. And it's something that I dreamed of when I was a little kid. And when I was a little kid, maybe I didn't even realize that it was something that was going to be possible, but I never let that dream die. And if you want to get into specifically into mushing, reach out to people like myself and other kennels and follow get a real good education of what you be getting yourself into before you get yourself into it. That's for sure, because it's a lifestyle. I mean, I live, eat, breathe, and sleep these dogs. It's all I do. Every decision I make financially or not financially basically is determined by them. And so they rule my life in a lot of ways, but they also make this awesome life for me. And so I think that the advice would be is if this is something you're interested in, if you have anything that you're interested in, don't give up on that dream, because I made this crazy dream happen. And 20 years ago, if I would have told you I was sitting here doing what I'm doing now, I don't know that I would have believed you. So it's one of those things where, even as crazy as your dream may be, definitely don't let it go.